From me to you, you have now tuned in to Imperfect Fathers Podcast.
Yo, what it do, man? What it do, good people? Positive energy and good vibrations to everybody out there, finally. This is RJD, the Imperfect Gentleman, and this is the Imperfect Fathers Podcast. Yo, T, I say what up to the good people this time for real.
Yo, what up, good people? This is like, take two. Yo, listen, this your man T or Triple coming to y'all live. I can't even say in living color because I'm in an undisclosed location. So my video was real shabby. I feel like deja vu. I feel like I just said this because I did, because you wasn't rolling. So listen,
Right.
Although y'all can't see me on video, let's just say I'm coming to you from the corner of your mouth.
Wow. That
I'm
sounds
coming to you straight from the corners of your mouth.
Yo, listen, I can't even do normally what I do when he says something crazy because he's not even on screen. So I can't even throw him off today, y'all. So we might be in trouble this week. But before we go any further, you guys know, if you don't know, if you're joining us for the first time, whether it be on Instagram, Clubhouse, or later on our platforms, whether it be on Apple or Spotify, we appreciate you. And we have an order of business that we do around here. And that order of business is this. We talk to our Father. We are the imperfect fathers, but we do understand that we do have a perfect Father. And we talk to him before we do anything else. And we also then at that point pay the bills. So with that being said, Father God, we thank you for another week. We thank you for another day. Yo, we say it all the time, but God, thank you for another second on this earth, because we know that just a few seconds ago, one of our fallen men, somebody did not make it for whatever they was going through, God. And right now, in this precious moment of life, we give you thanks, we give you praise, because we say thank you for life itself. We thank you for the gift of life, and we thank you for the giver of it. And right now, God, we want to say thank you, because a lot of times we come to you with our hands out asking you for things. But this moment when we want to say that we want nothing more to say thank you, because we understand that you've given more than we could even say thank you for. And we can never praise you enough for everything you've done and you're doing for us and through us. But right now, God, we ask you to cover us as we go over the airways to do our thing, right? The thing that you ordained us to do in our special way, that we may entertain, encourage, and uplift fathers to be fathers in the special way that they've called to be, God, for the better version of themselves and the ones around them. So right now, God, we actually do these things in Jesus' name. We do pray. Amen.
Amen. And Heavenly Father, P.S. I ask that you ask RJD to stop being selfish on the Imperfect Fathers Podcast and let me do the prayer one Sunday. Amen. Hallelujah.
Amen. Yo,
Please touch his heart, Father.
God, I'll talk to you again later on about this, Father. We'll talk about this. Yo, listen, man. Everybody joining us for the first time out there, there's no apologies given, because this guy right here is crazy. I just want that to be known. My man TR is in the building as usual, but right now he's not being on the camera right now. He's a disclosed location due to technical difficulties. So I don't know how that really works together, but we're going to go with it. Right now, what we're going to do right now is pay the bills around here, because we do pay bills and we pay them on time. For all our music needs around here and keep the lights on and everything beautiful around this place, we go to them guys over at Now or Never Entertainment. Listen, one of the most dedicated, focused engineers and musicians you can name, period. I've worked with him on a few different projects, and all of his content, to be honest, it comes from his heart. So I know that man puts everything into it. So if you need any music, I'm talking about whether it be country, hip hop, R&B, gospel, neo soul, you name it, holla at that man over at Now or Never Entertainment. Tell him the guys over at the Imperfect Fathers Podcast sent you, and he will give you 50% off any beat in the beat store. You heard? So shop smart, shop black, shop Now or Never. And listen, like I said, let them know we sent you, and we'll get that great discount. For the other paid sponsor of this beautiful podcast, right now on the screen, as you can see, well, let me help the guys down here on Facebook and everybody else on YouTube. Listen, I am wearing currently something from Cassie's Classic Design. Listen, for all your print needs, whether it be a t-shirt like the one I'm wearing, one of these beautiful signs, or even the cup currently right there over my shoulder, Cassie's Classic Design can print it. So for all your print needs, if you have a shirt, And the guys on the podcast even say it all the time. She will put something on your drawers. So if you need any print on your socks, on your drawers, on your t-shirts, holla at Cassie's Classic Design. If you want to do that, get at her on Instagram, Cassie's_classic_design. And if you're not on Instagram for some unknown reason, get at her directly at Cassie'sClassicDesign@gmail.com. Yo, TR Tribble, man, do your job, bro.
Yo, does your wife know how selfish you are that you don't let me pray?
Yo, Troy, listen.
I'm just asking a question.
My wife knows that I'm a no-nonsense game when it comes to me talking to God. She knows that much.
You do know I love the Lord.
Now, Troy, I do. You know what? And
you do know I love the Lord, right?
I'm gonna give you your moment next week. I feel like the Lord is letting me feel like I can release this unto you right now. For someone, you gonna write your what?
I'm gonna write my sermon.
Oh wait, see, this is what I'm talking about, y'all. This is what I'm talking about right here. This is why I'm not gonna let him do. I be trying, y'all. I do. Yeah, y'all even heard me in real time trying to let him live.
Listen, you said it on camera, you said it on live, so now you got to let me do it. I'm holding you to your word, and I know one of RJD's principles. I know one of your principles is be a man of your word.
Listen. Now that is a fact. I am a man of my word.
So you got to let me pray Sunday.
Yeah, but if that word is not being recorded or has been edited out, who knows what was said.
Listen, y'all, man, we just having a little fun, man. So listen, we coming back to y'all. You know, we've been talking about a lot of different, things, and over the last couple of weeks, and I've been, been gone for a couple of weeks. I want to apologize. One of the episodes really kind of sent me into a little bit of a little bit of a dark place, right? As we kind of talk about some of the things from our past. But today we're kind of talking about triggers, recognizing those triggers, and how do we manage them? How do we deal with them? When they come up, right? So one of the first things is recognizing to know, when you're triggered about, some trauma that has happened in your past, and I want people to understand trauma is not always people associated with something physical happening. Trauma is really, while there maybe have been a physical aspect to it, maybe a car accident, a gunshot wound, or, a sexual assault. But the trauma really happens mentally. Physical wounds, they heal, right? Sometimes we may have a scar that's left from it. But the emotional, the mental wounds that kind of stay behind that people can't see, right? That you can't put vitamin E on, that you can't put cocoa butter on, that you can't put a Band-Aid on, right? That you can't go to the hospital or urgent care and get it seen about. Those are the things that stay with us. Those are the things that dictate sometimes the decisions that we make, both good and bad. A lot of times, our trauma, our emotional trauma, dictates how we move in relationships. Sometimes self-sabotaging those relationships. Sometimes recognizing that we had some baggage that we were carrying with us once upon a time that we cannot bring into a future relationship in order for it to be better. So, we want to talk a little bit about just kind of recognizing when that trauma is present, how to deal with it in a positive way, maybe seek help from it or for it, and then, taking the necessary steps so that you know how to recognize it again going forward. So that's really it, man.
So TR, I was sitting back before the show and I was doing a little work, right? Because I want to define these words that we use so loosely, right? Like the word trigger, right? Like, let me pull the definition up really quick. It's this is Google's definition: a small device that releases a spring or a catch and also sets off a mechanism, right? especially in order to fire a gun. The verb causes something to happen or exist, right? So basically, a trigger is a cause, right? But a lot of times we gotta deal with what I know. The trigger is actually an effect. Excuse me. We got to find out what the cause of that effect is, right? Like dealing, especially with our past and our traumas, they don't really show up in our lives as traumas, right? Like, and those triggers, you don't know you're being triggered. You don't even know a trigger is actually a trigger until somebody explains it to you or shows it to you. So I think that's important for us to even explain what that even means. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like, so you said earlier in the statement that last week you had an incident that it caused, and we spoke about it offline. So I want to jump right into that. What is a trigger, first and foremost, to you, Troy? What is a trigger?
Oh man, it can be a variety of things, bro. I mean, for me, and that was 2 weeks ago. It was really getting myself prepared to talk about trauma.
Mm, mm.
And you guys have kind of heard me on air talk about, having been, molested. And it's something I've, talked about with my therapist, but it's something that you carry with you every day. It just may not be something that's present with you every day. Right. But man, it can be anything from, watching something on TV. It could be the way that someone or something smells. It could be, man, people associate so many different things. I heard this one person say one time they don't like the smell of collard greens cooking because they had been in a situation and in the background there were collard greens being cooked.
Wow.
So it becomes a trigger for them, right? And just in that conversation, I said, well, what does that feel like? What happens in that moment? They said, I just completely shut down. Like I've got to remove myself, from that situation. Because they recognize it brings up memories. And sometimes, man, it's you can't address those things, or you can't address those people. Other people have negative reactions. I mean, much more negative, reactions that may cause them to act out in a violent way, may cause them, to regress. Again, one of the biggest things I've learned is self-sabotage sometimes in your relationships. And I'm not necessarily talking about between husbands and wives or boyfriends and girlfriends. Sometimes it might be friendships. Sometimes it might be relationships between brothers and sisters, right? Mothers and fathers. I mean, so there are a lot of different things. And you talk about, hold on real quick, Doc. You talk about, that a trigger as a mechanism, right? A trigger is a mechanism. I don't know why I can't speak. My tongue feels mad heavy. A mechanism that is used on a gun in order to fire a bullet or fire a round that can often be dangerous.
Right.
Just stay with me for a second, right? A trigger is a mechanism on a gun that is used to fire a round, a projectile that can often be deadly if not used in the right situation.
Right.
So if anybody out there is listening, right, our triggers can often be, I don't always want to say deadly, but they can have consequences.
Right.
Right. There can be some consequences to our reaction sometimes to those triggers.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's it, man. Like,
so So now, like, and I'm glad you broke that down, Troy, because I don't want to go over, you know what I'm saying, use words and just use them loosely and not understand what they really mean. Because a lot of times I've learned that we don't know what's going on with us because the words that we're using and the language and the terminology we're using, we really don't even understand it, right? We live in an age in a world where we just use cliches and terms very loosely. So I understand the trigger to be something to make something go off, right? That's what I understand the trigger to be. And as usual, anybody who follows the podcast or follows me, period, understands that I only speak from a personal place. I never speak from a place that I've never understand or that I've never been. And for me, when I hear the word trigger and what that word does to me is it reminds me of the things that cause me pain, right? Like the words and situations and environments and sounds, as you spoke about, Troy, the things that have brought me, that has caused me harm. But at the same token, I think about the word trigger, it can also trigger good memories, right? So the word itself is literally an action that causes something. So I sit here and I say to myself, how do I identify like a trigger that's causing me, from a negative standpoint, harm, right? Like how do I know that I'm being triggered in a negative way? That's the question I want to ask you next, Troy. How do you know something is triggering you in a negative way?
Yeah, I think because it affects your ability to remain present, right? It can influence your behavior, right? Often in a negative way. So from an emotional standpoint, right, and people often, use the term "I'm triggered," right?
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of just takes you out of that present moment. And sometimes it can be, a few minutes to recover. Sometimes it can be a day or days, right, to recover.
Right.
Depending on how severe.
That's right. The severity of it. Absolutely.
Right. So again, and you guys know I'm big into seeking, a mental health professional.
Yes.
You may even you may seek a spiritual professional, right? I mean, it, just depends. But, and we're going to speak to the fathers out here real quick, right? Because, oftentimes people talk about women, being in bad relationships. But the reality is men oftentimes get into just as many bad relationships as women do. And sometimes even abusive, right? Physically, verbally. But it may also be that, you were just in a bad relationship with somebody or a bad situation. And you take that to your next relationship, right? Whether you were cheated on, whether you were, it could have been, hey, this is my baby mother, and listen, she don't let me see my kids, right? It's and there's something that happens in that current relationship that causes you to have a negative reaction, right?
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes people say, or somebody else will say, listen, I'm not that person. I'm not that person who did that thing to you.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not. They're just doing something that is reminding me or reminding you of that person that used to do this thing to me, that created grief. And oftentimes we have to let people know, and sometimes we don't know how, right? Because there's a certain level of embarrassment that comes when a trauma has taken place in a person's life, right? We don't want to express to people that something that you're doing, something that you're saying, a way that you touch me, a way that you make me feel is setting me off. It's sending me down this path of negative emotions. and I got to get away from it, but I don't know how, without telling a person or the room that this is happening. How do we do that?
Man, to be honest, Troy, like that question is like one of the most difficult things to answer, because like when you go to address something that's hurt you, like you have a fear now, right? Like, for instance, let's take it to the fear from the stove, for example, right? We have a fear of the stove because we've burnt our hand on the stove before. So now when you go back to that stove, you approach it with a different kind of caution now, right? And the same thing with, like, we deal with people that hurt us. We don't go and approach the person that hurt us the same way they did before they hurt us. So our approach to them is always going to be skewed a certain way because of how we felt from the interaction with that person. So when you said just now, Troy, about how do we do that? Like, bro, I don't know. Like, that's a question I would love to ask a professional. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, how do we do that? Like, what is the process of that? You know what I'm saying? Because that's where true healing is initiated, right? Like, and I guess one of the forms of it, I guess, because there's so many forms of healing and ways to get it done. But I guess that's one of the first and foremost ways of getting it started, bro.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's recognize it. Is it a date? Is it an anniversary? Is it a sound?
Mm-hmm.
Is it just a thing, a place, right? There's so many different there's so many different avenues that come at us that can cause a person, right, to relive that trauma just for a very brief second.
Right. Earlier, it could be a smell, a taste, a sound. Like, it's crazy because just last night, me and the wife was out on the town down in Fort Lauderdale, and I smelled the smell of the sand and the beach water that was near, and it just reminded me of just running up and down and have a good time with my kids. Yeah, it was nighttime, and it was just, you know what I'm saying, we was in a different vibe, a different feel, but it just reminded me. It made me think of that, right? So, like, that smell triggered a thought into my mind and gave me a feeling, right? And I think that's important too, to understand. Like, that's really what transpires. Like, the thought that we have give us the feeling, and then we react off of the feeling that we have. So I think that it's us right now having this conversation about, and like you brought the next part of the conversation up, was I'm going to bring about how do we identify our triggers? Like, how do we identify that we have them, and how do we identify that we are being triggered currently? Like, how do we do that?
I mean, I think sometimes we don't know, right? Until, well, let me not say that, because we know about and I'm just going to use the term PTSD, right? Post-traumatic stress.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always something that is terrifying. You know, people automatically associate PTSD. And again, ladies and gentlemen, I am not a mental health professional, right? Let me be clear. Let me give that disclaimer, right? I'm speaking from my personal experience. I'm speaking from having, sat and talked with other people. It's not always terrifying. It's not always something that's terrifying that has happened to us in the past. But it is, for all intents and purposes, traumatic because it changes the landscape of our mental health. It changes our ability to deal with certain things, either in a positive way or a negative way. So I think sometimes it is the people around us that saw the change happen, or they saw the event take place, and they say to us, "Hey, I noticed, when, or you're behaving differently, or you're reacting differently," right? Now's the opportunity to have a real conversation that says, "This is why. This is what happened specifically." And again, right, it is, sometimes it's just being self-aware, right? I got a partner, me and him talk a lot. And, one of the things he says is, man, I'm very self-aware of the things that go on around me and the things that I've been through in previous relationships. And it helps to keep those negative behaviors from manifesting into future relationships.
So that word you just used just now, big homie, was awareness, bro. And that right there I think that's the key word that we're gonna have to stand on in this podcast, bro, when talking about triggers, right? That awareness, that word awareness is so major, right? Like the fact that, like, to have understanding and to be aware that, number one, we are human, we have flaws, we have our traumas, and we do have triggers, right? The awareness to understand that's groundbreaking, number one. And then to go a little further and understand, like, you know what? Listen, not only am I human and I have traumas and I do have triggers, but and then in this moment I am triggered, right? I'm not myself right now. There's a reason that I'm not myself currently. And that comes, to be honest, with a whole lot of personal development. That comes with a whole lot of work. And at times, more so than not, that comes with speaking to professionals, ones that can really help you dig in, right? And get the awareness of what's truly going on. We said back a few weeks ago on a podcast, this very podcast, about how if we go get a cut that's necessary to get stitches or sutures, and we go put a Band-Aid on it, we're not doing ourselves any justice. If anything, we're setting ourselves up for failure, i.e., infections and things of that nature. It's the same thing when it comes down to. It's the same thing when it comes down to our triggers and our emotions. If we don't understand what's causing these things, right? Like if right now this lighting that's in my eye right now, and it's crazy, like this lighting right now, it could trigger me to think to myself, oh well, when I got booked when I was younger, I definitely had to stand under lights. And it was a bad experience. There was lights on me. You know what I'm saying? Just that right there, just understanding that, just the knowledge of the awareness of that is so key, because that right there, the awareness is where it comes into to play, where I'm not going off the hinge because of the fact that I'm triggered by this light. I know what's going on. I see what's happening, right? That's the awareness we're talking about. So that right there, we're gonna have to really dive into, Troy, that awareness factor. And you know what? I'm not gonna lie. I gotta stop this moment right now and say that I'm triggered, bro. You know why I'm triggered?
Why?
I am triggered currently because this is normally how it looks when you said something stupid. So I've been on the podcast for about 28 minutes straight, just looking at myself on about 2.5 cameras right now. I got the Clubhouse going right now. Shout out to everybody at Clubhouse. We appreciate y'all. I see you down there, Linwood. Appreciate you, King. Everybody checking us out on Facebook and YouTube. We appreciate you on the Breakthrough Kings platform as well as Instagram. We got some people chilling with us on the gram. So everybody out there, wherever you may be at, trust and believe that we appreciate you and we thank you for rocking out with us. And yes, I'm triggered because none of my co-hosts are visible right now. And I ain't gonna lie to y'all. I know I look good. I know I do. I do look very well. But I want to see somebody else other than myself right now. So after this podcast is over, we're gonna have a meeting, right? And I'm gonna have to chat some really strong words with my imperfect fathers. I just want y'all to know that. I'm triggered, okay? I'm triggered.
No more locked doors. No more locked doors. Nah, man. But you know, it's funny, Doc. My mom's was at my house yesterday, and shout out to Edna Mae Tribble. And it's funny because she and I used to have a really great relationship, and then it's been up and down. But over the last few years, it really got strained. And it was through something that I don't even think she necessarily knows that and I can't say she did it intentionally, right? She, at the end of the day, what she was really doing was, doing her best to look after herself and take care of herself. But in the process of that, something happened between she and I. And we kind of stopped speaking, or at least I stopped speaking. And it's been a while. She just returned back to Georgia. So it's actually been a while since, she and I have kind of had physical contact, and I had invited her to the crib yesterday. I was having some, a little get together at the house. But man, there was a little space in time prior to her arrival that really kind of had me in a super duper, just like emotional place.
Mm.
One, because I knew as soon as I saw my mother, she was going to immediately start crying. Like that is just who she is.
Right.
And sure enough, she hugged me. She immediately started crying. And I had to kind of get myself in a mental headspace not to let that bother me. My mother's a crier, but I don't always do well with other people's tears.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to handle them sometimes. I don't like to see it. So I had to take a minute. I had to so after that initial interaction happened, I had to come upstairs because it just put me back in a for a tiny second, it put me in a little bit of a tough mental headspace because I hadn't dealt with her. But I knew yesterday it kind of said, listen, I have to take this opportunity to start the healing process.
Right.
So, I just had to thank God that I had the mental awareness, a little bit of self fortitude, and honestly, the coverings of God's blessings to continue to kind of go forth, because there was a point where I really just wanted to disappear for the night. I really just kind of wanted to disappear. But I'm glad I didn't.
In hindsight, like you're saying you're glad you didn't in hindsight, but I wanted to talk about what you felt during, right? Like when when you, because you said out of your own mouth that you don't like seeing tears and you don't know what to do with them. So I want to talk about the emotion, the thing that you felt while you had to do that, right? Because one thing as men, especially and more so as fathers, we have to do a lot of things that we don't feel like doing, right? Triggered or not, right?
Yeah.
As fathers, there's a lot of things that we must do. So I want to talk about what you felt like in that moment, doing something that you did not like to do or you didn't feel like doing emotionally in that moment. What did you feel like? What did you feel?
Doc, that's a really great question, and I'm gonna take you back to bring you forward. My mother didn't raise me. My grandmother raised me, so my mother's mother raised me, and for a long time, although my mother and I kind of had a decent relationship as I was coming up, I always held a grudge against her. I did not respect her because she didn't raise me. And to take it a little bit further, I recognized later on, after seeking my own mental health support, that there was a certain level of respect that I did not have for women as a result of something that I had experienced with my mother, right? So she didn't do it on purpose. She did not raise me on purpose, but she was 16 when she had me. My grandmother brought me home from the hospital. Later on, she kind of got on drugs, and my grandmother was like, listen, you stay here. But it affected future state, my relationships with women and how I dealt with them, how I treated them, because I didn't, and I harbored it. I harbored this resentment against and I can't even say all women, against, for some strange reason, certain women. If you got close to me, I was going to do something to sabotage the relationship. And I recognized that that was something that I carried from, my mother. So fast forward, kind of coming back to yesterday, and my mother has asked my wife for help in repairing our relationship.
Wow.
She has asked in the past, and I have blatantly said, listen, it doesn't need your help. I don't want your help. And it is something that I will eventually do in my own time, when and if. It's something that my therapist, my previous therapist, tried to work with me on, and bridging and closing that gap in that relationship. But there would just be little things that my mother would do or say that would remind me, and not intentionally, that I did not want to mend the relationship, because it just felt like it was just going to end up being fractured again and broken more than it had previously been. But the one thing that I recognize today is that I'm not a little boy who needs a mother anymore, right? I'm a grown man, and I have had some amazing women in my life who have given me the things that I need in a mother. But those things have also allowed me to heal, to be in a place today to say that I can and want to start putting that relationship back together. And that the triggers are little bumps in the road that I have to address within me, and maybe at some point with her. Because the reality is, she has no idea.
Right.
She has zero idea. And I know that's tough on her, because she's like, listen, I know I probably wasn't the best mother, but goddamn, I wasn't the worst either. But oftentimes our triggers, the things that set us off, make it feel like that in the moment, that this was the worst thing, or the worst person, or the worst circumstance or situation to have been in. But it's what we now do to take control of it. And that's one thing I think a lot of people struggle with. How do they take control of it to be able to move forward from it?
Yo, Troy, as you was sitting here, bro, you was talking about your mom, right? I sat here and I was like, yo, the beauty of this podcast, especially for me, if nobody else, right? And I'm gonna be completely transparent. A lot of things that transpire on this podcast comes from a selfish place. I do it for a sense of healing and direction for myself. This Father's Day coming up, Troy talked about it on the part of the podcast that wasn't recorded because I didn't press the button, but he mentioned that Father's Day is around the corner. And the birth of this podcast started from Father's Day. So it's almost been a year that this podcast has actually been going. But I say all I like to say is that this podcast enables me to even deal with some of my emotions, its triggers, and my traumas. And it's the platform that I created now, and I feel comfortable just bearing my all, because I realize that my trauma and my testimony of my triumph through my trauma is somebody else's therapy, and also blueprint to get through whatever they may be getting through. So with that being said, I'm gonna tell you right now that it wasn't until even in this very moment that I had not dealt with a situation that occurred between me and my mother. And it wasn't until, as I'm sitting here hearing you speak, Troy, about the situation with your mom, is that it really hit home for me. So what happened is this: I didn't graduate high school on time, right? I didn't graduate. I needed a few credits. I was being a knucklehead. I didn't care, right? So I got down to my senior year. My mother did everything she possibly could so I can graduate. Long story short, I finally graduated after doing some of the courses and doing a few other classes to get the credits I needed. I got my diploma. But I never walked, right? I never gave my mother the satisfaction of walking, of seeing me walk down the aisle. I'm stuttering right now because this, as you can see, this is an emotional thing for me. So what happened was I went to school, right? I went to a program. People may know Sanford Brown, and I did it for billing and coding, right? Because the protocol of me getting into the program that I needed, I had to go through the prerequisite courses to get to the course that I wanted to get to. So that was billing and coding. So I had to get through that to get to the program I really wanted to get to. So anyway, I finished the program and I graduated through that program. And the one thing I was so focused on, and I was gung-ho on finishing, is so my mother can see me walk, right? So she can see me walk down the aisle for that whole experience. So I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I'm not a studious person. I'm not the greatest student in the world. Me getting through that program was pulling teeth. You hear me? Like, shout out to the teachers at Stanford Brown and anybody that know me. You know I'm not an easy student, and I'm not one that really likes to sit through lessons and all those things. So it was rough for me, to say the least. But I did it, right? I did it because I had the goal and the mindset of, I'm going to walk across this aisle. I'm going to get this diploma in my hand. I'm going to look up in the audience, make my mama proud. I get all the way through the program. Now is graduation day. It's time for me to go do the thing that I'm trying to do so my mother can be happy, right? Sit down, they're going through the whole the formalities of the event. And it gets to the point where they call my name, right? So it's like, all right, now Roderick Dockery, please come up. So now I'm like, all right, cool. I heard everybody else get their names called and people start cheering, go crazy. I never even looked back to realize that there was nobody in the audience from my family. So when I went to get up on the stage and I got the paper and shook the hand, and I heard just the people that knew me in my class clapping their hands, and I looked across the audience, I felt so hurt because I really, really did that whole thing for my mother. And then to find out that not only did she miss the graduation, but she missed it because she was still waiting for her then girlfriend to get ready. Yo, Troy, even into this very moment, my brother, like I was vexed about that because I gave up so much, I felt, of what I really wanted to do just to please and give her that one thing. Just to give her the experience of seeing her firstborn walk across somebody's aisle and in completion of something. And you know what that did to me, Troy, and looking back at things now? It caused me to fear wanting to finish anything, bro, now that I think about it. Like, if I get close to finishing anything, Troy, I'll stop.
Yeah.
I'll shut down. Like, my wife will tell you, even down to washing the dishes. Now this is real time therapy for me, y'all. I'm bearing it all right now. This is what I'm really going through. Like, I'll get down to even doing some of my projects of my very own work, and get down to the final sentence of something, just put my pen down and walk away from it, because I have a fear of being disappointed at me finishing the goal. But the importance is, the reason why I told y'all that, and the reason I'm even sharing that with this on this platform right now, is because the awareness factor, guys. I said all that. I'm aware of that now. So now I have something to execute on, right? So now that when I find myself shying away from completing something, I'm going to lock in and say, you know what? You won't be disappointed there. Just finish through. Just follow through. And this is why it's important to understand and to be aware of what your triggers are and what they cause you to feel. Because to be honest, if I didn't understand it, would I be able to address it? You can't fight something you can't see. And you can't heal something that you won't reveal. So it's like, for me, like I don't have no problem with being transparent and bearing it all, especially, well, shoot, this is my platform. You know what I mean? T, like, we can say whatever we want.
Right.
But
Right.
the truth is, it for me, it's therapy. And to be honest, bro, this whole even conversation just enlightened me. And I feel like it just taken me to a whole other level, even my own actuality of my lifestyle. Like, I had a like, you guys just witnessed me having an a higher enlightening and awareness moment of my life about what triggers me and moves me and why I do things in real time. So I hope this helps somebody. I hope that this is not something somebody just watching or just listening to, because real rap, I'm telling y'all, even down to me washing the dishes, it just happened yesterday. I went in the kitchen, I washed every dish in there just about. I got down to the last 4 or 5 forks and maybe a cup or two, and I just walked away. And I didn't intentionally say, you know what, I'm walking away because I don't want to finish this. I just removed myself and started doing something else. But as we sit have this conversation and me realizing where it's coming from, the awareness, first and foremost, I want to take this moment to say, thank God. I want to thank God right now. I thank you, God, because without you, I wouldn't have the awareness of the thought process of where that came from. And this is why I said early in the conversation, we got to be so careful of not putting Band-Aids on cuts that really need stitches and sutures. Because right now, had I just been like, you know what, I don't like finishing things. That's just the way it is. What happened then, T?
Yeah.
There's no level up there, right?
Did Cassie get upside your head with one of them dirty frying pans that you left in the sink?
Nah, but she was hot though. She was like, yo, she's like, you see what I'm saying? You didn't finish it. And I'm like, yo, at first, I ain't gonna lie to you. I was like, yo, shut up. Like, like, so what? It's like 4 dishes. And like, I took that role because, to be honest with you, I was trying to use my show. You know what I'm saying? To try to mask what was really going on. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what really happened. You know what I mean? Like, she hit me in the head verbally, not physically with no skillet though. She definitely verbally assaulted me, and to the point where I had to really start thinking. And to be honest, Troy, you definitely helped me through this, bro. Like, even this conversation. So you can definitely look up in your Cash App. I'll definitely send you some, but I'm not gonna charge you. I'm not gonna have you charge me by the hour because you're not professional.
Nah, man, but you know, it is. Listen, sometimes it's small things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the breakthrough is recognizing what the thing is. The breakthrough is understanding that not only does it have an impact on you, but it may be also impacting things around you and people around you.
Right.
Right? It is impacting things around you and people around you.
Yo, and Nate hit something really on the head. It's the small things that get us really messed up. Like, they get us messed up. Absolutely. Like, excuse me, and I read that wrong. He said the small things that get us upset about. Yo, to be honest, bro, like, he's so right, because like that right there to someone else, like, oh, listen, bro, your mom just missed you walking across the aisle. Like, to me, it was major because I literally did it because of her. Yeah, I really wanted I wanted what came after the fact that of me being able to go to the program. I really wanted to, but the actual graduation and all that, and me actually doing the things that it took to get there, I used the motivation of me doing it for her. And then, I also say in this episode of the podcast, yo, Ma, I forgive you. I don't think I've ever said that to her about the situation, and I do. Like, to me, that's over with. You know what I'm saying? When it came down to the hard feelings behind it, but the healing about it all, I guess, to even right now in this moment, Ma, I love you. I forgive you. I understand that things happen. I want you to, if you're holding it, I don't know if you are, because we've never spoken about it, but if you are holding it, let it go, because I have. It's in the past. I'm healed. It's literally something that I can look at now, and it's made us stronger, because I love you more now. I have a deeper understanding for who you are now as an individual, and I appreciate you. So, Mama, I love you. I ain't gonna tell you that too many more times because I know you probably gonna hear this and be ready to fight. Anybody know my mama? She ain't with all the lovey-dovey. So too many more I love you, probably get me slapped. So I just put that out there. If I come back next week, my eye is black, you just know I said one I love you too many to my moms, man.
Nah, but I think it is it's definitely and our triggers cause us to carry baggage too.
Facts.
Right? Because sometimes we're trying to figure out how to avoid them, that we don't deal with them. The realest gangster I know. Right.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, we don't. Sometimes we're trying to avoid them, that we don't deal with them, and when we don't deal with them, they deal with us.
Yes, and like that's shout out to the episode we had that just actually popped up on YouTube, but it's been up on Apple for a few days now. Our last episode was dealing with our traumas before they deal with you. And anybody who has not caught that episode, it was a phenomenal episode. Our brother and family, James Penn, came through and set the stage on fire and dropped so many gems about literally dealing with our trauma, right? And how to deal with it in a proper way, in a positive way. Yo, one of the bars that he dropped from the episode was something that I'm gonna like really repeat and regurgitate forever. I told him I'm stealing it, and he knows that, and I have no problem with doing it. But what he said was, you were born looking like your parents, but you will die looking like the decisions you made. That right there, wow. Wow. So think about that. With all your triggers, all your traumas, and all those things, if you choose them, and you choose to let them eat you up, fester within your spirit and all throughout your life, so it causing you to bleed on yourself and your loved ones around you, and all the negative things that come from not addressing your triggers and your trauma, if those continue to happen, you're going to die looking like that, right? There's many people my age and younger who look like they're almost in their 70s, some people, because of not even the things that they've chosen to do to their body physically, but the emotional damage of not dealing with their past traumas and the scars that it comes from it, right? These things we're talking about are emotional, right? They're things that happen on the inside, but they actually translate and show through us physically. Believe it or not, if you've seen somebody who's been depressed for a certain amount of time, they begin to age. They begin to look a certain way because it's starting to manifest through the look of their body. It's starting to come through and to be a visual thing. So it's not something that's to be taken lightly, right? And yo, TR, we coming down to the last 7 of the podcast, bro. So you know that in each and one of these episodes, bro, we give the fellas and the queens valuable nuggets to live off and take with them throughout the week, man. So do what you do, man.
So my nugget today is simply this. Spend some time with yourself. Meditation is, key for a lot of people, seeking a mental health therapist, but just take a moment to look back at some of the relationships that you have had, good, bad, or indifferent, or the experiences, right? Because sometimes they don't always come in relationships, they come in experiences. And take a step back and say, how have those things shaped me? What have those things done to me in a positive way or a negative way that impact what I'm currently doing today? And write them down. And say, listen, I'm going to work on one at a time. I'm going to work on them one at a time. And seek help working on them too, right? Don't just feel like you got to do them alone. And I'm not saying you always got to go to a mental health professional, right? But take it to somebody that you trust, that is going to lead you down a good path, right? Sometimes we give things to people to help us, and they don't always lead us down a good path.
Right.
So that's it, man.
Yo, TR, as always, we appreciate it. And for me, guys, I'm going to say this week. And shout out to our other brothers, Swiss and KB, the other two imperfect fathers who are not here. They're here in spirit. They're definitely being imperfect fathers in real time right now.
Okay.
They're doing their due diligence in that space of being fathers currently. So to those two kings, we appreciate and love you too. And for me tonight, guys, I'm going to say this. I'm the character and confidence building coach. So what I'm going to tell you is this about triggers and your traumas. If you are one of the men who's struggling with your confidence or your character, it's not because you were designed to. I'm going to say that one more time. If you are a man who is struggling with your character or your confidence, you were not designed to. There is something causing you not to operate on a frequency where you're confident and functioning on a high level as a man. You're designed to operate at a design frequency on a design level of excellence. God didn't put a malfunction design on this planet, right? He didn't make you different from me. It's just information. It's just something that you haven't dealt with yet. And the question is, are you willing to deal with it? Because a lot of us can be shown things, right? Because you can't be blamed for something you haven't been shown, right? If you don't know, you don't know. But if you know better, you're supposed to do better. So right now, after hearing this podcast and you feel like this is you, don't let your ego get in the way or your pride. Address your traumas. Deal with your triggers. Find out what they are. And then once you do, everything else will be a byproduct of the work you've done. So where you feel like you lacking in your character as an individual, you will then improve. Where you feel like your confidence is lacking, you will then there improve as well. I'm not telling you guys this because I read this in the book or somebody force-fed me this. I live this. This is my life. I'm currently living it. And every man under the sound of my voice that knows me or I've coached, they can vouch for me when I tell you this. The only difference between me and you is the fact that I have the information. That's the only difference. I'm the same man you are. I have the same struggles. I go through the same things. But the only difference is I stand inside of my authenticity. I appreciate and I model my healthy masculinity to a point where my character and my confidence is never in question. Especially now that I've learned to operate in my true authenticity of who I am and who God's called me to be. So with that being said, kings and even queens all over the world that's just hearing my voice,